Hello and welcome to New Filmmakers Los Angeles. I am delighted to be joined all the way from Brooklyn with a big virtual hug from LA from us at New Filmmakers. Tyler and Spencer, how you doing?
Great. I'm doing great.
Yeah, we're feeling pretty good. Yeah, it's a little tired, but you know, we're doing well over here. So
they don't stop. They had their screening last night, which was amazing, and it was so fantastic to have you with us. But for those that haven't seen Fantastic Beats and where to find them, let's take a look at a clip.
Nap rap, nap rap, nap rap, nap rap, nap rap, nap rap, make that ass clap. Nap rap, nap rap, nap rap, nap rap, nap rap, nap rap, make that ass clap.
Firstly, how Brooklyn and wonderful can you get with this beautiful brick background that's going on in the background? I just love it. It just makes me feel like you're in New York City. Listen, I you know I love you guys. I think you made a really fantastic film. I just love your creativeness and what you bring and build together. But for those that haven't seen it, tell us a brief synopsis of your film.
So our film is Fantastic Beats and Where to Find Them. And basically it concerns a young and upcoming film student named Ernesto, who becomes friends with and ultimately bonds with the subject of a documentary he has to do for school, a person named Daryl Sweet, also known by his more infamous alias, Young Coochie Sweat. So,
which is the best title you could possibly have as a performer, and I hope you trademarked it because it's brilliant. Honestly, so good. This is such a the comedy, everything. I just love it. I honestly was left wanting more. I really did. But what I'm just curious, like, where does the inspiration come from? Where does it begin with this wonderful idea, and you're like, I need to make this into a film, and how did that come together for both of you?
well, I think that it started with like that. So Spencer and I actually moved. We originally met in California. So back in Los Angeles, when we actually were like flying up to college. And we went to Berkeley together for 4 years, and then we lived together afterwards, after college. And we basically bonded really quickly as friends. And we started making like comedy skits online, and we made our first film while we were still in Oakland. And immediately after that, we moved out here, and it's like, okay, we want to do this. Like, this is what we're meant to do. We were meant to do comedy together. We had this like bond. We did our first film. It was a film, you know, but afterwards it was like we moved out here, and it was like, we started working like day jobs, and very much like we had a lot of limitations. You know, we didn't have like the best equipment. We didn't have the biggest network. We had just a few friends that did music, and essentially it's like, but we want to still make something, right? It's like, and so we were thinking about like, what do we have access to, right? Like, we have access to this like 10-year-old DSLR camera. We have access to the fact that like we have some friends that can produce some music, and we have access to Spencer's wonderful brain. And so Spencer,
our wonderful brain.
Spencer created like basically this wonderful like Snapchat character. Like, he would always send me every now and then, right? As far as like him playing this rapper, like basically, so like this, like he would do like rap, like short raps and send them to me, and I'm like, this is so funny. Like, we're going to have to just do something with this. So we basically wrote an entire script around that. So I think that, and combined with, I think a lot of like, we know a lot of like up and coming rappers and things like that who like were like, the idea behind them was just like, it's like they had this sort of ego to them. And I think when we talk about like celebrityness and when we talk about ego and things like that, I think a lot of folks immediately like take that jump, right? I think that we really need a lot of creatives think that they're God's gift to earth, right? And Spencer and I were just, what are you even like talking about? What are you rapping about? Like, or what are these films that you put out there, kind of thing sometimes. And so I think we just wanted to kind of like tackle the artist's ego, and we're just like, this is the character to do that with. So I think it all just I think it's turning our limitations to our advantage in a way. So
In a way, Young Coochie Sweat is sort of like my diss to other rappers, because I'd never told Tyler this, but for a long time I wanted to be a battle rapper. So
Yeah.
back in high school, I would watch battle rap videos and come up with raps in the shower, but then I would go to school and I was too shy, so I'd never challenge anyone. So when we finally got the idea for the movie, I was sort of like, okay, how can I, to Tyler's point, you know, how can I encapsulate the ego that comes with being a rapper, but also make the character still somewhat lovable. Like, I didn't want it to be a caricature, completely off-putting. I still wanted you to sort of empathize with Daryl and understand, and maybe even like relate to his struggle of sort of being like, oh, I'm so great, why doesn't anybody see it? But at the same point, or at the same time, make him so ridiculous. You're like, all right, bro, like you need to just listen to somebody.
Critique, critique important.
Yeah.
It was so, no, but it was so great because you did create this, endearing character. You kind of like, I want you to do well, please. You know what I mean? Because, and I love that you kind of took to, because listen, there are a lot of, we all know, you being from, Southern California, very familiar with Hollywood and kind of the egos and the superficiality that kind of comes with it. And it's kind of draining, and it's also, it's a lot, you know what I mean? And there's people that have got egos that don't really kind of deserve to have those egos that they've created about themselves. So I love that you took this, like, this amazing comedy style take on it. But you also, again, kind of like gave a light on the up and coming, rapper that does want to make it and has got it and wants to find his foot somewhere, or her, to find her feet in their art. And I love that you had like that kind of like comedic, like, making kind of a little bit of fun of what is existing, but also the realness of actually an artist trying to break through as well, which was really put lovely together. You're so great on camera, Spencer, and it was so great to see this character like unfold. Like what I love about you both is that you both have this great art and this great vision, and you didn't as much as you said there were limitations, you made limitless possibility for yourself. Which was great, and that's why you've achieved what you've done. But I'm so curious because you both went to Berkeley and you didn't actually study film. You actually studied both something completely different. So how did you dive from that to this, and what was that journey like, and how's that been for you?
Well, I think Spencer, you could start off.
Yeah, well, both of us, we've always been like huge fans. We're huge nerds, if you couldn't notice. Yeah. So we've always been huge fans of like pop culture and cinema, especially. And my mentor actually is an independent director. So very much like he would take me to Barnes and Nobles, and I would actually like read film magazines, and he would expose me to like different, like the LA Film Expo and like Location Expo. So I was very much at a young age exposed to film as an art form, and sort of got this intricate understanding of it. Like, this isn't just a movie, this is a whole process, both getting it to the screen and how it gets made, and there's people behind and in front of the camera. So very much I was immersed in sort of understanding film as something that you live, that you sort of carry with you in everything, and you try not to be pretentious about it when you go to cocktail parties. So sort of like that, like I guess I was very much fortunate in that I was born into an environment that was allowed to nurture something that I really cared about, that I really loved. And so, but at the same time, there was this pressure of sort of coming from Inglewood and going to Berkeley and being very much sort of focused on how could I uplift my community and the communities I care about in very tangible, immediate ways. Cinema can do that, but it wasn't the first thing that came to my mind. I watched a bunch of Law and Order, and I was like, oh, I'm gonna be a lawyer. Boom, got it. So I studied political science, and that was my focus. But the whole time I was still going to the movies and like spending a bunch on DVDs and watching everything on Netflix. So it was not even a secret passion, because I would talk about films, and like we still talk about films obsessively, but it was much more just coming to terms with, oh, you can do both. There's ways you can give back, but also, give yourself room to pursue your passions and hopefully bridge that gap.
Yeah, I have a very similar story, because growing up in Long Beach, which is not too far away from Inglewood, I grew up, there was a lot of environmental issues in Long Beach. We had we have a really high asthmatic rate. A lot of Southern California does. I grew up with asthma, and a lot of growing up, even though we're called Long Beach, our beach wasn't the cleanest. And I think people always joked about that. Like, if you swim in our beach, you might get sick and things like that. And that pushed me to study environmental science for my undergrad. But I think to Spencer's point, we just always nerded out. This is ultimately, it's this is something that we just couldn't run away from in a way, right? And so I think when Spencer and I met each other, I feel like we were this was the perfect duo to kind of bring that out. So we're creative partners, but accountability partners, right? So it's we're the ones that and so thankfully, we're co-directors, co-producers, co-writers, you know, best
Yeah.
friends, you know, like, yeah, it's like, and roommates, you know, so we like, we're forced to like, we share a lot of things. So
Yeah, I honestly, there's certain people and there's certain films where you can really feel that all the dots connect because there's so much trust and collaboration in each other, and that really shows in the work as well. It really does. I love that you studied something and you're just expanding with your world with film. And there's so much you're going to do in your career. And I love that you know, it's all about how can I expand what I want to do in my life rather than thinking I've got to go in a certain way and that's the only way I can go. And it's almost like it's like we don't have, like, society sort of tells us we have to do something and it's like, no, why should we? And I love that. And I feel like you're always both going to give us something where I don't know what to expect next, because you know you're always thinking and open and being creative. Now you go on this journey, well, and it's allegedly like 2 weeks that you follow, obviously, you know, this mockumentary. How long did it actually take you to film it?
it took several months, and
Yeah.
because Spencer and I actually work 9 to 5s during
Yeah.
the day, and so I think that we had a very unconventional film like schedule when filming this, because it's basically like, where's our free time kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I think that then very realistically, when it was portrayed on screen, like how I think that there's kind of that sort of crisis as far as like that Daryl kind of goes through, is like, should I give up or should I not? That was something that very much that we were a part of. I think that especially coming out of college and like getting your first 9 to 5 job and doing, it's like, I think you kind of realize just how hard the like just living is in the world, right? I think like growing up as kids, like we already felt that, but it's another one, like just how draining sometimes that 9 to 5 can be, and like also like kind of losing sight of that goal. So I think that like so ultimately, like, was like, we kind of, this was a project that we kind of picked up. Sometimes we kind of dropped it, we kind of picked up, and so, and thankfully, since it was just the two of us for the most part, we were able to do that. We had the flexibility to do that. It's like, oh, I have this sort of idea. So I think overall it took what, about 6 months, and a lot, and like sometimes it was like with like some reshoots and things like that. And like if you watch the movie and you don't notice it, like Spencer's hair length is just always so different throughout the film. Like for 6 months. I remember we showed this to a friend, and she was like immediately, like when we first screened it, she was just like that was cool, but like why did like Spencer's hair did he get a haircut in the middle of the movie and then immediately like it grew back again? But I think that's one of the things, thankfully, that you could do with like such a small team, right? And yeah, so like it was easy to do some reshoots. It was easy to do, like, for example, like the second music video in the subway station, we didn't do enough coverage on the first time that we filmed it, and so we just immediately ran back like the next weekend. It's like, all right, we need it, like, it's like these shots we need to get this time. So we happened to film it when no one was on like when the subway track was closed,
Which is a rare thing.
Yeah. So. Yeah, so the second time we filmed it, there were actually people there, and it was like, oh, it's like, the people going to be in the background? Is that going to be a problem? It's like, we got to roll with it. So
yeah, it was
well,
a labor of love and
go ahead.
Definitely. Oh, I was just saying it was a labor of love and persistence, and very much just taught us that, you know, if you really care about something, it's okay to take your time with it and to grow with the project as well. Because even one of the raps I perform that's not when I'm at DJ Samsung's house, I had written that to be one of the songs we featured, but I didn't really like it. But at the same time, Nap Rap hadn't come to me yet, so I was really sort of struggling with, we have this song, but I don't really enjoy it. What are we gonna do? Maybe we should just, you know, completely not have music in it. We can figure it out. I don't know.
Yeah.
But then, you know, inspiration hit and it worked.
Which is one of my favorite scene in the movie. Was completely improvised, actually. I
love that. It's so cool.
And like it was completely improvised. But on the day of when we were actually supposed to record one of the songs, DJ Simpson actually was the person who, Edward Wong, he was the one that actually produced the music for the film. Yeah. So it, like, ironically, it all worked out. And he said, I can't act, so it's like, okay, so let's just play with like we'll have you just deliver a few lines. Like it'll be okay. So basically, we were just like, all right, we know the structure of the scene. We know how to hit this. Like, we need to hit these 3 points to make the joke work.
Yeah.
But the rest of it, and I'm so thankful that like Spencer's such a strong improv actor. There was like, if we can like we'll have the camera pointed at you, like just make sure like it's like start with this line and make sure you end on this line. And it will work out. And I'm so thankful that it did for that. So.
I was gonna say about, was there any improvisation? Because I love, like, you know, the director Ernesto, his role and the way he spoke to your character Spencer. It was just so funny. Like, it was just so funny and it felt so real. And I was like, if I was on set, I'd just be laughing at what you were doing, Spencer. You're really, really clever. But it was, that whole dynamic was great. So was there much? So you obviously in directing it, like there was you kind of just let things play out. Is that kind of how you like to do your process? Like when you're making stuff, do you kind of like to just kind of let it play out, or do you ever work closely with the actors? How does it work for you normally?
I think that it's a combination of both. I think that especially since I got to work a lot with just like personally with Spencer, and like I think it's knowing the strengths of your actors, right? I think of like, for example, a director I really love, Barry Jenkins, right? I think for like his first feature film, Medicine for Melancholy, I think featured like improv actor Wyatt Cenac, and then an actress, which I'm totally blanking on her name, I'm so sorry. But basically, like I remember like watching interviews with him, right? And he was like saying that Wyatt would just kind of like keep going off, right, on like these sort of like wild improv tangents. But meanwhile, the classically trained actress, she's very much like, wait, what? Like, it's like, wait, like what's going on kind of thing. So I think it's very much knowing, it's kind of being ready for both of those things, right? And so with Spencer specifically, I was like, with delivering lines to him, I'm just like, all right, like we can kind of play with this sort of scene a little bit, right? And sometimes like, and thankfully, since it was just the two of us, a lot of times we just like, all right, like make sure, like it's like make sure we want to like, and I think a lot of joke structure is very similar to storytelling. Sometimes you want to beginning, middle, end to your jokes, right? So it's like for certain scenes, it's like we want to hit these 3 points, but like along the journey along the way can kind of look a little different. So,
and I think that's definitely one of Tyler's strengths as a director, is just he's very much like, okay, here's the intention, here's what we need to convey, here's X, Y, and Z to do it, but also go nuts. Just to make sure we convey that, like, oh, Daryl is kind of a jerk roommate. Oh, he's kind of sad right now. We don't know what that looks like, but we just need to know. Here's X point in the movie. We need to get to Z. However that looks like, have fun.
Yeah,
I love even Derek's little, like, his input when he's just there. It's just, even he has just these mild little moments when he comes in on screen. It's just so funny. It's really, really, really great. Listen, we love the fact we got to have your film at New Filmmakers, and I hope that you've kind of enjoyed, experiencing with us in this with an audience as well. I'm very curious to know what is next for you both in your career. I'm sure you've got no excuses to be creative in your free time. So what's next for you both to do?
What isn't next right now?
Right? Or what's happening next in the world too?
We have no clue, but basically we're working on our first feature-length film, which is exciting because Tyler and I haven't written anything over 30 minutes. So that's a bit of a endeavor, but it's basically an exploration of sort of the life we live in, like New York, millennials of color, the navigations. So a lot of similar themes, but also very different, and exploring, the interpersonal relationships that navigate and sort of maintain the communities we live in. We're also comedians, so we perform stand-up. Hopefully when the world opens up again, people will still want to see folks, so that'll be good. We do a bunch of skits. Basically, I think I was telling everyone this, like, it's quite serendipitous that, like, we're born and raised in LA, go to New York. The first festival, literally the first ever festival, like the first time we're showcasing our movie, not to people sitting on our couch, is in LA. It's beautiful to me. So thank you to y'all. But definitely, we have so much just coming, and like a bunch of ideas, and we live together. He steals my food sometimes. So we're just always going to be in each other's faces, coming up with things.
I'm so glad that you're both together, because I think, when you find that person you connect with to make and create is so special. And I also am excited that you're making a feature, and just navigating life and just living in New York and going through the trials and tribulations of life. And I can't wait to see, your feature length as well. What I really love about you both is that you, against the grind of life, you keep going. Obviously you're working hard, you're making when you get free moments and free time. And I think that's going to be such a great part of your autobiographies one day, to say, hey, we worked really hard to get where we are here right now, trust me. And I'm excited to hear those stories as your career progresses. But in your careers thus far, because I think you're both such, intelligent humans, that what advice could you give out to filmmakers that maybe are in, a similar position in terms of just trying to start, navigate filmmaking, working, and trying to create? Any advice that both you, Tyler and Spencer, could individually share with the audience to close on?
I think that, so actually last night at the festival, we got into one of the breakout rooms where we got to talk to a young film student, and she was in high school, and she was like telling us like, it's like, hey, like, it's like, I don't have a budget, and when I saw what your film, and it was just so inspirational. And it's like, yeah. And like, it's like, for example, like I did like a shot where I put like, I couldn't afford to do an overhead shot. So I put a mirror on the ceiling, and it was so janky, and I don't want to do that. And I was just like thinking, I'm like, that's a really good idea. You need to write that down. I think like one thing that we just mentioned earlier, I think it's just two things. One, it's like, use your limitations to your strength. I think all the time we all have very interesting stories, and just because if your stories aren't necessarily presented on screens that you might see, like it's still valid, and there's still something interesting there, and we all have that. And also too, especially if you're up and coming and you're not necessarily in the industry, it's okay to take your time. This film took 6 months to make. It's at the very least, like, and that was just like the pre-production, the actual production of it. And then like we had to do the editing and everything, which took a little bit of time. So we've been in New York for about 3 years now. And yeah, it took about almost 2 years in total just to like get this small project off. And I'm thankful that we put that time and love into it ultimately. And so I guess that's what, my advice would just be, like, it's okay to take your time. It's okay to, it's okay if things get hard. It's okay to take rests. It's okay to, and I don't know. Do you have anything else?
Mine would be, you have to do it for love. I think very early on, when we first moved to New York, we wanted to do we basically wanted to be Saturday Night Live's rivals. We're like, all right, we're in New York. Here's what we're going to do. 2 skits a week. Nobody's stopping us. But very quickly, we burnt out. So we moved in September. We arrived in New York in September, and then the following February, Tyler sat me down and was like, look, I love you, but we can't keep doing this. It's a week thing. Like, I'm losing my mind. I'm working 40 hours a week, and then I'm spending another 40 hours trying to write and edit. And I was like, thank you. I'm having the same mental breakdown, trying to come up with skits and act in them. So very much you have to do it without, delusions of grandeur. You just have to be a true student of it and always understand that, hey, I don't know where this is going to go, but I have this idea. It's, to Tyler's point, it's honest to who I am. I don't necessarily see it everywhere, but I'm going to put it out there, and hopefully people receive it. And if they don't, hey, I can just say, hey, look at this funny music video I made about taking naps.
This is so great. I love it. Well, thank you for your TED Talk today. It's been so great to hear at TED Talks. No, really. Thank you. Taking your time is so important, Tyler, and Spencer. Making it with love is amazing. I appreciate you both. I'm looking forward to your feature, and thank you for bringing fantastic beats and where to find them with us. So thank you, Tyler and Spencer.
Thanks, Danny. Thanks to New Filmmakers LA.